Today, I want to discuss the topic of neuroscience. Neuroscience is the study of the nervous system and what we call brain science. And this brain science is how we understand the way in which the blood flows to the brain and creates cell activity. Um, this is often measured by what's known as a fMRI, and it's called brain imaging. It's a functional magnetic resonance imaging, and this process identifies where your blood flows to in the brain under specific circumstances, and that's how it alters our behavior. So, for example, when you get nervous, your blood flows to one area of the brain. When you get angry, blood flows to a different area of the brain. And the idea is to be able to identify where the blood flows, when, and then how to address those circumstances. Um, when using neuroscience, is important to recognize the leadership aspect associated with it. This process allows us to monitor behavior and to develop reframing strategies. And these strategies allow us to manage circumstances and behaviors. And just to be certain, reframing is the act of encountering a situation with multiple scenarios and choosing different options to identify which option is the best fit for you or your situation. And it's a common practice, especially when using the 4 frames of leadership. You place each leadership frame into the situation, and then you identify whether the structural or human resource or political or symbolic frame is best for those circumstances to help you make your decision. And this relationship that we just recently spoke about between leadership and neuroscience is called neuro leadership. And this is the way in which an organization develops, trains its leaders through education, management, consulting, and coaching. Because oftentimes organizations not only have to choose the best fit for their companies, but they also have to continue to develop those leaders as the company grows. So, for example, in my field, substance abuse counseling, you have to have a certain amount of hours every time you renew your licensure. And so part of that training that the organization is going to have to use to develop its leaders is going to have to focus on current trends. And in today's society, for example, crack cocaine is not going to be a focus over fentanyl. That's just the way it is. So now you're going to have more education about fentanyl and the effects of fentanyl, so that you can recognize that in that scenario, that situation. And what we learned is we discovered that more regions of the brain are activated when a leader is a resonant leader versus a dissonant leader. And a resonant leader is a leader who is vocal, who's going to be present in a sense to their staff. Because you have some leaders who are absent, who are not present, who do not lead by example or with their voice present. They lead with orders. So that was an interesting fact to find that leaders who were more resonant had more regions of the brain activated than dissonant leaders. And this is the type of information that is used to help organizations and leaders become more effective. Because learning that being a more resonant leader has that effect on your own brain, it's interesting to find out what type of effect a resonant leader has on the staff below. Some of the traits of the effective leaders include trustworthy, fair, genuine, and reassuring. This is also important because as an organization begins to train their leaders and develop them, they're going to recognize that when those traits are present, they have a better chance of getting buy-in from their employees, which also leads to employee engagement and also leads to job satisfaction, which are all important factors in the organization. Lastly, it's important for leaders to be able to follow their instincts when they have those gut feelings. Whether we like to admit it or not, Um, we can go structural and we can say that everything is planned out and everything has a purpose, but it's important to remember that our instincts are what guide us. And that's just a natural way that we interact with others and situations. And when we start to ignore our instincts and we choose to go with those systematic processes over our instincts, I think we lose something in that. So it's important to be able to balance that scenario properly. And lastly, I want to discuss the benefit of neuroscience in the work setting. Neuroscience could benefit the work setting by giving the organization a better way to reframe situations, as we discussed previously, and alter the way leaders interact with staff. Leaders who interact with their staff have better morale, and it's important for the culture, which are all important for job satisfaction, which leads to greater client engagement as well. And this would include altering the approaches that leaders use. So not only do we want to reframe these situations, but we also want to alter the other approaches that leaders are using. And a great example is the concept of alternative medicine. This term does not have the best reputation. It's 2023. I actually haven't heard it in quite some time. And it might potentially drive people away from any affiliation with the company using that term. And so that term is used to describe the way in which the medicine is derived. And I'll get a little bit deeper into that, but the most important thing is what we use instead, which is natural replacement therapy. And a good example to use juxtaposition is the nicotine replacement therapy. It's very common. They get a patch, they put it on their arm, and as they progress, they lower the levels of nicotine present. However, these patches do have a good reputation, but I'm very pro limiting those negative substances. If I don't want to drink alcohol, I'm not going to say, here, just put this glass of alcohol on your arm until you finish. It's just a little taboo for me. So I prefer to use alternative options that are natural and actually may heal the body as opposed to slowly destroy it. So despite the effectiveness, it's important to recognize that it has the potential to exacerbate the condition. That's the bottom line. When in theory, in practice, nicotine replacement therapy is replaced with natural replacement therapy, the use of nicotine is eliminated, and that increases the chances for full extinction at a faster rate. Using natural combatants with less side effects. So for example, I read a study where St. John's wort was used, and over time, not only did it heal the damage done from smoking nicotine, it also provided a way to eliminate the use of nicotine altogether. So it's a good example of ways in which neuroscience and reframing and altering the ways that we see things can make a huge difference.